application. So let me quickly share the screen with you. Here we have it. Hopefully you can see it well. Yes, so today we're going to continue the application that we have started yesterday during the hackathon. And here I'm talking about the virtual events application. The goal for today is to implement the backend side using Nhost. So it's going to be a tutorial that will be beneficial for you, whether you are following the hackathon or not. So yeah, let's learn how to add a backend layer to our application using Nhost. So yeah, that's the plan for today. But let me quickly describe what is the event that we're talking about, the Notjust Hackathon. This workshop is the one workshop that we did at the Notjust Hackathon. And yeah, the event in itself is a 3-day event. Come on, my presentation doesn't want to work. Next one. Yeah, it's a 3-day hackathon started for mobile developers that started on Friday, 25th November until 27th. So we are currently in the 2nd day. Tomorrow is the last day where you can build applications, submit them, and enter the possibility to win some prizes as well. So we have a demo day on Monday, 28th. That's going to be exciting. We're going to see all the projects that have been built during this long weekend. We have prepared for you 3 practical workshops. This one is the second one. If you're interested in the first one, you can check it out on my channel. It's publicly available on Notjust development channel. And there we talked about the building mobile applications with React Native. And also we practice doing that by implementing the user interface for virtual events application. You can follow all of this on Zoom. If you want to join the Zoom meetings and ask questions, you can do that as well. Or if there is no space on Zoom, you can follow them on YouTube. We're going to live stream all of them here. So back to our workshop. Today, we are going to build a full stack virtual events application, as I said before, using React Native and Nhost. And the goal for today until the end of this tutorial is to implement, first of all, the authentication layer to let users create an account, sign in, manage their accounts. Then we're going to work on our database by designing it. Then we're going to implement it. Our database is going to be a Postgres SQL, and we're going to manage it using Nhost. After that, we're going to build our GraphQL API. And from our application, we are going to use Apollo client to query our GraphQL API, fetch all the data about the events, about the participants, about users, and so on. So it's going to be a lot of fun stuff to build. Actually, a lot of these things are quite easy. So today, I hope it's not going to take a lot of time. We're going to manage to do everything quickly in order for you to take this knowledge, take this information, and apply it for your project. As I said, we're going to do all of this using Nhost, which is an open source alternative to Firebase, but the focus of Nhost is on GraphQL, and we are leveraging the power of GraphQL to build the backend side. So yeah, and Nhost also is the sponsor for today's workshop. I hope you will enjoy them. I really love the simplicity of Nhost and how easy it is to create full stack mobile application, specifically for people that don't have a lot of experience with building backends, like with Node.js and stuff like that. With Nhost, it's pretty easy. You're going to see it throughout this workshop. But yeah, as you can see here on the screen, in like 7 lines of code, here we can see both authentication, both initialization, and also querying the GraphQL API. So yeah, as you can see, it's pretty powerful, but you're gonna see it until the end of today's video. And I want to encourage you to let's stop for a second and let's support the open source ecosystem, and let's start Nhost on GitHub, because as I said, Nhost is an open source project, and for open source projects, this is quite important to determine how successful this will be. So wait a second, I can hear myself from somewhere. No. So yeah, go to github/nhost/nhost and make sure to leave a star for the project. And if you do that, I would highly appreciate it. And I think we can move on and get started with actually building stuff, the fun part about it. If you want to follow along, I prepared for you a technical guide the same way as I did yesterday. So you can follow this URL. You can also find it just by going to our notjust.dev/blog website. It should be the last one. Or I can share this URL with you here in the live chat. Here is the technical guide that we're going to follow in today's workshop. And also, if you as well want to follow along, make sure to download the asset bundle from the website, from the technical guide. And there I have prepared for you all the dummy data, all the presentations as well. The PDF presentation that you see here, I put them all there. And what's most importantly is the source code. So I have put there a folder with the source code where you can find the source code from yesterday. So if you didn't manage to follow along, but you want to give it a try and test how to work with Nhost, then you can reuse the code that we have built yesterday, start from there, and follow along with me today to implement the backend side. And also, for everyone who already downloaded the asset bundle, you can download it again, because I updated it. So if you want to find the presentation and the source code, make sure to download it again. And yeah, open the virtual events UI in Visual Studio Code, do npm install to install the libraries. And after that, we're going to do everything together. Yeah, before we get started actually with the implementation side, I thought that it's important to stop a bit and to see, to look at them, how it's going to be the architecture of our application in the end. So with Nhost, our application has access to multiple endpoints. For example, starting from the left, we're going to have a GraphQL API. And the GraphQL API behind the scenes, Nhost is using PostgreSQL for the database, which is one of the most popular SQL databases out there. And on top of that, PostgreSQL, which in itself is a powerful database, they're using Hasura to create the GraphQL APIs. So that's how we get the GraphQL APIs. We also have the authentication to allow users to sign in, sign up. And what I really like about the way Nhost is managing authentication and also storage is that all of this data is in the same PostgreSQL database. And what that means is that it allows us to create easy relationship between our models related to the users or the authentication data. And also they support Lambda functions, which are functions that are running in cloud, executing some of your code on demand. So yeah, that's how our application is going to work. Today, we're going to focus mostly on the authentication side, on the GraphQL, and how to set everything up. With that being said, I think we are ready to get started. And let's put it. Let's move to our application. Here is the application that you should get if you download the source code from the asset bundle. and if you run it on your device. It should work both on Android and on iOS. Here I'm running it on an iOS device. So the main screen, actually, this is not the main screen. I mean, yeah, this is the main screen, but let me first show you the authentication screens. So if we just change here, is authenticated to false, we will see the authentication screens. At the moment, they're not working, but that's going to be our goal for today, to make these screens functional. Here is the sign-in screen. Here is the sign-up screen. And if we say true, after the user signs in the application, he's going to be displayed with the main agenda of the event. He can check like the calendar and can check multiple sessions or like events that are happening there. This data is going to come from the database. So we're going to design everything and query it here. What else? Like we have profile page and also the list of users from our application. So yeah, that's our application, and that's what we have to work with today. Hi guys, everyone in the chat, how is it going for you? Let's have a quick chat with the live audience. Where are you at with your project, guys? Have you started it, or you prefer to take value from these educational workshops only? All right. So let me open our technical guide. Here should be our technical guide, and let's scroll down a bit until we get to, let's create our application with nHost. This is going to be our first step in this tutorial. We're going to start by creating an nHost account, which is free, and also creating an application that we are going to use. So let's open nHost from here. Let's go ahead and press on start building. But before that, very important, press here, star as on GitHub, and leave a star here. Just like that, it takes literally 2 seconds. And after that is done, this is a prerequisite, then we can go into the start building. And let me check, I think I'm gonna create a new account to show you the process. So going to nHost, let's go to sign in. And here you can either create an account using your GitHub account, or we can sign up and create an account using our email. So let me do it with my personal account. Email already in use. Okay, I've been using that one already. What about support? Yes, this one works. And here we are greeting with our dashboard, our nHost dashboard. What we should do from here is, of course, creating our first application. But before we do that, we have to confirm our email. No, actually, we can create, the button is active, so we can press create your first project here. And let's give it a name. The name will be virtual events for me. Virtual events. Choose the workspace, the default one that you have. And here you can copy the database password, but we're not going to need it for today. And you will be able to find this password later. So don't worry about that at the moment. Under the region, choose a region where you'd like to initialize your backend. And usually you'd choose a region that is either closer to your end users, or if you're building a development application, just choose a region that is closer to you. In my case, I'm going to go with Germany, and I'm going to choose the starter project for now. because that's enough for a development project. If I'm going to go in production with my application, I would probably consider going to Pro, because for only $25 a month, which is not a lot, you get 10 gigabytes of that database and a lot more for the network traffic and backups. So let's choose starter and create our project. Now, Nhost will provision our backend infrastructure, and usually that takes, I think it's even less than 2 minutes. So yeah, let's wait for a couple of minutes until it finishes, and then we can get started. No, actually, I think we can, while we are waiting for our application to install, we can move on with our process. In our guide, the next step is to install and set up Nhost in our application. So let's do just that. So we're going to have to, you can open Nhost documentation on the side, so you can check if something is not working with the documentation to make sure that everything is up to date. If you're watching this later, but for now, this is what we have to do, is to install Nhost React, GraphQL, and also Expo Secure Store. And I'm going to explain in a moment why do we need all of this. Okay, let's go in our Visual Studio Code. Let's open a new terminal. And from here, let's install Nhost React, GraphQL, and Expo Secure Store. So yeah, the library has been installed, and let's actually check if the application on Nhost finished deploying. Yes, it has finished deploying, and this is what you should see in the dashboard of your application. We're gonna slowly discover more things on this dashboard. We're gonna go into details into the database, GraphQL, auth, and so on. For now, let's go back in our application and let's go ahead and initialize the Nhost client. To initialize the Nhost client, it's pretty straightforward. What we have to do is to import, give me a second, is to import the Nhost client. Of course, I cannot figure it out here with all of my windows. So yeah, to initialize Nhost client, what we have to do is we have to open our app.tsx, basically the first file, the first component that mounts. And here, let's go ahead and import Nhost client from @nhost React. We are using the Nhost React library, even though we are working in React Native, just because, yeah, like it's compatible with React Native, and it provides very easy to use hooks that simplifies. Yeah, it's a way to interact with Nhost that we are used to using hooks to get access to things. So having the Nhost client, what we should do is to go ahead and initialize a client by initializing a new Nhost client like this. We're going to see an error because we have to provide some data, and these data are the two required properties when initializing Nhost client is the URL, the subdomain, and the region. And this tells Nhost how it should connect to specifically to your application. Where do we get this information? Let's go ahead in our Nhost dashboard. And from here, we have first region. So let's press copy from here and paste it in our region. In my case, that's EU Central 1. And let's do the same for the subdomain. Let's take it from here. And let's use it in the subdomain. No, not like this. I need to copy it like this. And now paste it in the subdomain. Okay, and the next step, we have this client, but we need to make this client accessible and available to all our screens and components. To do that, we are going to import from Nhost as well. We're going to import the Nhost React provider like this from there. And we are going to wrap our navigation with the Nhost React provider like this. And let's make sure to send the Nhost client to this provider. Now, all the client here, or let's call it Nhost as well. Now, all the screens in our navigation will have access to the Nhost client, which means that they will be able to get information about the user, do queries, and so on, basically interact with the backend. That would be it if it would work on the web, because by default, Nhost will use the browser local storage to store information like the authorization token of the user. And if we continue like this, everything is going to work okay. However, Nhost will not remember if you are signed in or not. And every time you will open the application, it will ask you to sign in again. In order to properly tell Nhost how should it persist data, we need to tell it what kind of client storage it should use. So for that, we installed a library called Secure Storage. So let's import everything from there, from Expo Secure Store, and let's import it as Secure Store. And this library is similar to the async storage that allows you to store locally on the device storage information. So now that we have this secure store, we will send to the Nhost client. We're going to send the client storage type, which should be Expo Secure Storage. And here you can see the other secure storage types that there are. There is also React Native, which uses the async storage, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm going to go with the Expo Secure Store to store it more securely. And also, I'm going to provide to the client storage here the secure store. And just like that, our configuration for Nhost is done. So that's how simple it is. Now let's go ahead and refresh our application, make sure that we don't see any errors. From the functionality side, nothing should be changed because we haven't implemented anything yet. We just set up Nhost. But that's already good. So that means that we can go ahead and commit everything and move to the next task. So init Nhost. So back to our guide. So we have finished with installing and setting up Nhost. Here you can see the detailed code that you need to have in your app.tsx. Just make sure to check it out if you have any issues with following along. Now the next step would be authentication. Let's go ahead and implement the authentication layer and allow users to sign in, to create an account, to sign in the application, to manage their account, and so on. You can also open the Nhost authentication docs to read more about that, but I prepared for you everything that we need to do. So from the backend side, from the Nhost side, we don't have to do anything because authentication is enabled by default. And what we have to do is to actually start using it. So where do we need to use the authentication? First of all, let's go ahead in our navigation index, and where we will see the is authenticated variable, let's say false, in order to see on the screen the authentication screens. And in a moment, we're gonna properly assign the value to the is authenticated. But first, let's go ahead in the screens, auth screen. And let's start with a sign up screen, the one that will create users. So in this sign up screen, we reach it by going to by pressing on this label, don't have an account, create one. So if I press here, that's the screen that we have. And the form contains the name, email, and the password with repeat password. Now we get this data in the function on register press, and we have, as you can see here, the name, email, and password. And what we have to do is to go ahead and I'm going to copy out this try catch. Probably we will not need it. And go ahead and sign up here with this information, with a name, email, and password. So let's go ahead and start implementing that. To do that, we will need a hook that we will import from Nhost React. And the hook is called, come on, use sign up. And here there are multiple ways to sign up. By the way, Nhost allows a lot of methods to sign up using email, passwords, also using SMS or magic links that you receive on email. So you check out the documentation to learn the different ways you can integrate. And of course, you can authenticate using social providers as well. For this use case, I'm going to keep it simple, and I'm going to use not the email passwordless, but use sign in email password. Not sign in, actually. We need sign up. Sorry. So use sign up email password. Now using this hook in the body of our sign up screen, after we get the navigation here, let's go ahead and get some information. Use sign up like this. So what the hook will give us, it will give us, first of all, the function that we can call to actually sign up a user. And this function is called sign up email password. And also it will give us a Boolean if it's loading or not. And others like is success or is error or the actual error. So there is a lot of things that and information that you can receive here, depending on your use case and how do you want to render and display that on the screen. So what we're gonna do in the on register press, let's go ahead and call the method that we got here, the sign up email password. We will call this function, and because this is an async function, we should await. So let's await sign up email and password, and we will send here some data. The first parameter is the email, the second one is a password, and then we can provide some options that will describe the user. One of these options is the display name, which is going to be the name used to as a display name for the user. So we're going to take the name from our data, the name that user wrote in the input box, and we're going to put it in the display name. In this case, we can also actually trim this name and make sure that there is no white spaces before or after the name. What else? What else? You can actually provide metadata, and these are any data that you want to store about one specific user. So in this case, you can actually store the name or the age or anything else that you might ask from the user. I'm gonna also save a name in the metadata just to show you how we can see it there. So now we are calling this sign up email password, and we're going to receive some results from there. What we are interested in, we are interested to know if it was successful or not. So let's get the error from this execution, and if there was an error, that means that something is wrong. Either the user already exists in the database or something doesn't match. So in this case, I'm going to simply do an alert. I don't know, a very generic one. Oops. And I'm going to also provide the error message so that the user knows what went wrong. And what else I'm going to do? But what happens if the sign up was successful? So if it was success, what we're going to do here is success. If you signed up successfully, I think we should just simply navigate to the sign in screen. So using the navigation, let's navigate to sign in. Like that. And now we don't need this try catch anymore because the error is handled on the Nhost side, and we get it like this from there. What else? We have the is loading, so we can work with this is loading. For example, to give some user feedback of what is happening when he presses register, we can go ahead and find the custom button. Sign up, not this one, the register one. Custom button register. And for the text, let's go ahead and say that we want to say register if it's not loading, and if it's loading, let's say register and ... just to show that there is some progress. And also we can actually disable the execution of this function on register press if it's already loading. So if it's already doing something, it's better to stop the execution, not to send two requests to your backend. And just like that, I think we should be ready to register our first account. Are you ready? Shall we do it? Let's try. Let's see if it will work. So for the name, I'm going to go with Vadim. I'm going to provide my email. I'm going to provide a very easy password. What's happening there? We're going to refresh it. So sign up by Dim. Register. And we see register ... That means that something is happening. And actually, we don't see neither an error nor the redirecting back to the sign in, which means that something is happening there that we do not see. And what exactly is happening? We get back another error code called needs confirmation, needs email verification. So if an account needs email verification, Nhost will send you back this variable to true. So let's go ahead and have a check for this as well. So if needs email verification, email, or let's do verify your email. And there is not gonna be any error messages. Check your email and follow the link. Okay, now if I'm going to try to register again, I should see the error email already in use because I already signed up with this one. Let me try to use another one. And we should see now register. Verify your email. Check your email and follow the link there. So that means that we are registering. The only step is to actually verify the email. Before I show you in the Nhost dashboard what's happening there, or actually let me quickly show you to better understand like what's happening there behind the scenes. So let's go ahead in our virtual events. And what we can do is we can check in the authentication here that we already have 2 users. And from here, you can manage them. You can see their email. You see that they are unverified. You can also delete them, change roles, and a lot of other important stuff. Okay, so we see that we are successfully creating users. I received already the confirmation link on my email. So let's go back. Let's go back to our sign up screen, because to the sign in screen, and implement the sign in functionalities in order to see how everything goes together. Okay, so in the sign in screen, let's open it up from our off screens, sign in screen. Here, let's go ahead and import also a hook from Nhost React. Nhost React. And the hook is going to be use sign in email password. And similar to how we used the hook use sign up email password, we're going to use it here as well. So inside the sign in screen, after we define the form, let's go ahead and use our hook, use sign in email password. So what can we get from here? We're going to get, first of all, the function that we can call whenever we want to sign in the user, and also the is loading. As you can see, we were tracking the loading state using a state variable, but now it's going to be managed from the Nhost side. So let's continue using the is loading variable instead of this one. So I'm going to delete our loading state. And everywhere we are checking with if loading, then we will change to is loading. We don't need to set loading. It's automatically managed behind the scenes. Let's scroll down a bit until we see here loading in the custom button. And I'm going to do is loading. And that should be it. Yeah. Okay, so back in our on sign-in press, this is where we will get the data. So we can get from this data information from our form, which is email and password. Let's get it from the data. And then by calling the sign-in email password, and by sending there the email and the password like this, we can get back again the error if there was an error, if the password and the email doesn't match. And also we can get the needs verification step as well, because that will also prevent the user for signing in. So we can actually take these if statements from the sign up screen to handle the error message and the needs sign up. And also let's make sure to import alert from React Native. And just like that, let's give it a try and see how we can sign in. So I'm gonna write here my email, and I'm gonna go ahead and do a mistake in the password. If I press sign in, then actually it doesn't go into the error. It first sees that we need email verification. You can either verify your email by following that link that you should receive on your email, or for development projects, I'm going to show you also how you can disable this check. And it can be handy if your application is still in development and you don't need to enforce this requirement to have emails verified. If that's the case, then let's go back to our Nhost dashboard. And from here, we're going to go to the settings at the bottom. Let's go to the sign-in methods. And here we can deselect require verified emails. Let's press save. And now Nhost will not require the emails to be verified. So we will be able to sign in right away with that email. If you cannot change these settings, go back to your Nhost dashboard, like not the application dashboard. And we need to make sure that our virtual events is in development. Actually, I think it's from the settings. Yeah, if the application is in production, in that case, you cannot change, you cannot deselect these required verified emails. Okay. Now that we disabled this check, we can go back and try to sign in again. And it still tells us to verify the email. Let's try to refresh the application. Dev. And yeah, it still tells me to verify the email. Maybe I need to create a new account and the account after registration. So let me try to create actually a new account. Register. And now we are redirected to the sign-in screen, which means that we didn't get that needs email verification. And from here, I think I can sign in with a newly created account. Let me do some mistakes in the password. User is already signed in. Oh, user is already signed in. And that means that it worked from the first time, right? Okay. We get an error that the user is already signed in, which means that signing in actually worked correctly. And yeah, we implemented it. Now the problem is that when the user is signed in, we need to redirect him to the home page. To do that, you might think that, okay, in the sign in, let's receive here the is success, and we can do if is success, then navigate to the root or home, right? You might think that this should be an option, but by doing this, yeah, this is not the best option of creating protected routes, because at the end of the day, you are not protecting it in any way. So we need to handle these protected routes from a different level. So instead of navigating there, we will actually swap what screens are available to the user depending on his state, whether he's authenticated or not. And doing that will ensure that your protected routes will never be leaked to your unauthenticated users. So yeah, to do that, what we have to do. What do we have to do for the protected routes? we have to go to our navigation because routes is about navigation. So inside our navigation index here, you remember we had a is authenticated variable that was depending on this variable, we were changing what screen we are rendering. So if it's not authenticated, we are rendering only the sign in and sign up screen. If it's authenticated, we are rendering the screens, the protected screens. So the goal right now is, instead of hard coding this variable with true or false, is to take this information from Nhost, because Nhost is responsible for authentication. Let's go ahead and import a hook from here, from Nhost React. The hook is called use authentication, should be use authentication status. This is the one. And we can get the is authenticated by calling them use authenticated status. We need to destructure it, because besides this, we also will receive a is loading. And when the application just mounts, we will first get the is loading to true. In that state, we still don't know if a user is authenticated or not. We are waiting for a response. So that's why we need to check if it's loading to basically return an activity indicator, a spinner, a loading indicator. Otherwise, if it's authenticated, display the sign-in screen. Otherwise, display the home screen. Let's try to refresh the application. And now, because we are authenticated, we should automatically be redirected to the home screen here. And that's exactly what's happening. We're going to go through all of this flow of registering, signing up, and so on one more time. But let me quickly show you how we can sign out, for example, and how we can display information about the user. To do that, we're going to go to the profile page. Let's open our profile page from the screens. From the screens, we have the tab 2 screen. This is our My Profile page. And here, for example, we have a sign out button, right? And also we have the user information. Let's start first with the user information to display information about the user. So to do that, again, we're going to use Nhost to import a hook here. Use user data from Nhost React. And using this hook, we can get information about the user. So user equal use user date, not date, but data. Data, like this. Now we don't need the user from the dummy data, and we don't need the users array here. We can delete them safely. And we can go ahead and console log the user just to see what do we know about the user. Let's clear it. Let's go to our profile page. We see that the name is support. There is no image here. And this is all the information about the user. I can do it with JSON stringify just for us to see it better. Null and 2 here. Yeah, this is the information about the user. It has an ID. It has created at display name support. It has also an avatar URL that is using the Gravatar service. And it's really nice because for this email doesn't have an avatar, but for my personal account, it automatically links with my image. Yeah, by default, I don't have to do anything. We're gonna actually sign in with that one to see. It has like locale, email, and other important information about the user. Also, that metadata is also here, the one that we can send here anything that we need to know about the user. Perfect. That's how we get the user data. And lastly, we need to sign out to complete all the functionalities for the authentication. So for that, we're going to import the use sign out from nhost. And let's go ahead and get the sign out function, sign out, using the use sign out method. And when we press on the sign out button here, which is this custom button, we simply have to call use sign, not use, but sign out. Let's go ahead and give it a try. So if I press sign out, I'm automatically redirected to the authentication screen. Now, if I refresh the application, it will stay here because back in our navigation, in the root navigator, we are checking, is authenticated? No, it's not authenticated. So let's render the sign in and sign up screen. And now if I'm going to try to sign in with the other account, I'm not sure if I'm going to have to try again because this one needs verification or not. No, that one worked as well. And what's cool, I was saying about this is that it automatically gets your avatar for the user, which makes it so much easier to handle and manage users because you don't have to integrate it, like storage just for a profile picture. And we're going to actually benefit from this feature a lot in today's video. So guys, that's how we implement authentication, everything when it comes to authentication using nhost. So far, we have started by implementing the sign up flow. And let's quickly recap what we did to implement the functionalities for the sign up. For that, in our sign up screen, we have a form with a name, email, and password. Having this name, email, and password, we used the sign up with email and password function that we got from nhost, and we created a user using this data. nhost then told us if everything worked okay, or if the email needs verification, and if everything went well, we are redirecting the user back to the sign-in. And here in the sign-in screen, as well, we imported a function called sign-in email password from nhost. And then using the form data of the email and the password, sending it to this function, we authenticated the user, and nhost simply answered us if it's okay or not, if there was an error or if it needs verification or not. Then, oh, what was that? What was that, Vadim? Then, based on the authentication state of a user, we have created protected routes. And what does that mean? That means that our navigation will render different screens based on the authenticated status. Getting the authenticated status was pretty easy using the hook use authentication status. And yeah, that tells us if a user is authenticated or not. Now let's go ahead and sign in the application. notjustdev. And after you sign in, it automatically changes to is authenticated true and goes to render our root bottom tab navigator, the main homepage. And from here, lastly, in your application, sometimes you need to know the information about the user who is currently authenticated. And for us, that was on our profile page. And to do that, it was pretty simple as well by using the hook use user data, which gives us all the data about the user. And also on this page, we used the function sign out to log out the user from his account. And that was it. That was everything for the authentication. That was everything for the authentication, but not everything for today, because this is just the beginning. We still have to do the database, the queries, and so on. So guys, let me know if you have any questions related to the authentication at the moment. while you are writing your questions, I'm going to go ahead and show you a bit on the dashboard, on the Nhost dashboard. So what do we see? In the authentication, we have 3 users. I'm not going to show you the database yet because we're going to get into that in the next step. Yeah, let's stop it here. This is the easiest way to manage your users from this beautiful user interface. There is also a possibility to see them directly in the database, but that's going to happen in our next step. I don't have water. Alex, can you please bring some water? Can you please bring some water? Thank you. Hello. I don't have it here. So, let me actually not to forget to commit everything so that you will be able to look back at what specifically we implemented during this part. Let's do nhost authentication. But I forgot to add. Okay, perfect. Did you manage to implement it yourself, guys? Shall we move to the next step? Yeah, let's move to the next step because we still have a lot of things to do today. So that means that for our authentication, we are done with protected routes, profile page, and so on. Now we are at the database. As well, you can find the documentation about the database there, but we're going to take it step by step and implement it together. So, as I was saying before, Nhost is using PostgreSQL for the database. And what does that mean? That means that we can connect and manage our database in multiple ways. We can directly connect to the PostgreSQL. If you know how, and if you have experience with connecting directly to remote databases, I wouldn't recommend that because Nhost provides a very easy and developer-friendly user interface to manage your database from directly your dashboard. This previous time when we worked with Nhost, they didn't have this view, but now like it makes so much easier to manage your database, to design your database, just by simply creating and managing all the tables here. So what do we have to do? Let's think first of all about the data that we will need to store in our database. Usually the data, we can look at the dummy data that we already work with and kind of understand what information we will need. So in our dummy data, we see that we have kind of events that contain name, name, date, and so on. So yeah, the events are the individual sessions that are happening on one specific date with one specific topic, so we can check them here. This list is the list of events that we have here. So this is the main table that we will need. So let's go ahead and start with this one. Okay, starting with the table, let's define the name. I'm going to call it event. And let's define what columns do we need. First of all, we will need an ID because this is going to be our primary key, and it was automatically selected here in the primary key. The type of our ID, you can choose either integers and auto increment them, or I prefer better UUIDs because they are less predictable. And what do I mean by that is if you have auto incremented IDs, then if you know that there is a post with an ID 27, you just simply change 28 and you can request the next post that maybe you shouldn't have access to. But with UUIDs, you cannot easily guess IDs of your items. So that's why it's better to use it for the ID. The default value, let's use the random UUID in order for Nhost to automatically generate IDs so that we don't have to always send these IDs there. Now, yeah, let's go to the next one. What else? The name, we need a name, and the name is going to be a text. And what else? We need also a date. For the date, there is multiple ways of storing it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the timestamp with time zone. Or no. Yeah, let's go timestamp with time zone. And that's, I think, everything that we need at this moment to get started. So let's go ahead and press create to create our table. And just like that, we have our table created, deployed, and ready to be used. That was pretty fast. Now what we can do is to start inserting new rows here, new events. So let me probably open it from here, and I'm gonna initialize it with some information just for us to have what to work with. So let me populate the text with something. For the day 24th, 11th, 2022. I don't know, 030000. Insert. And I'm going to do like this a couple more just for us to, to have data what to work with. This is 25. Okay, so 25. And let's add one more day. This one. 27th, 11. By the way, Nhost also supports data seeding, and I think it's way easier to just create a seed for your data and to run it to populate by default with some data your database. So, but I already inserted a couple of them, and we will be able to work with it. Okay. With the event, that's clear, but we have another feature in our application, and that feature is, for example, displaying what users are attending an event. And this, like any user is allowed to click join event, and they will be added to this event. So if you remember, let me quickly open it. Before I explain you with a relationship with the next table, let me actually show you directly another way to look at the database. Because should I? No, that's going to be in the next step. I'm going to show you how to directly look at it. What we can do is we can change the schema here, because in the public, we have all the tables that we define. But besides the public schema, we have also the authentication schema. And this schema is managed by Nhost. So we can look at it, we can check the structure, but we shouldn't update it. And here, one of these tables is the users table. And in the users table, we see actually the information like ID, created that. We see that information about users that we saw in the by console logging it in our application. It has like all of this like display name, locale, and so on. Why I wanted to show you that we have this users table is because we're going to need in the next step to create a relationship between an event on one side and the user on a different side. So every event can link to the users that joined that event. When we think about this relationship, we should think what kind of relationship it is. And the question is, how many events can a user attend? A user can attend many events. Now let's reverse the question. How many users can attend the same event? Well, also many users can attend the same event. That means that the relationship between the user and the event is a many-to-many relationship. Whenever we have to work with many-to-many relationships, we have to include another table in between the two models that we are trying to connect. And the table in the middle will basically point to one user on one side and to one event to on the other side. And every line in that pivot table, in that table in the middle, which we're going to call, for example, attendee, every line there will represent the, a user going to one event. One user, one event. And then we have a lot of rows there. So that's how we create this many-to-many relationship. So a pivot table, let's create it by calling it event attendee. We're going to start with an ID of type UUID as well that we randomly generate. And a pivot table needs two properties. It needs to know what is the ID of one relationship, user ID here, which is UUID, and what is the ID of other side of the relationship, the event, also UUID. And knowing these two fields, we know what user is going to what event. Okay, but we're not done yet. We need to provide some foreign keys to ensure that the tight relationship between events and users and event attendees. So for a foreign key here, we're going to select the user ID first. And the user ID should point, no, let's check the event ID first. So the column event ID from our event attendee table should point to the public schema to the event table and should be equal to the ID of the event. So what we are saying here is that the event ID from this table should be equal to the ID of the event. And lastly, we can, we can leave it like this and press add. And let's go ahead and add the next one. And the next one is towards a user. So in this situation, we need to change the schema to authentication. And we will choose the table users and the column ID. We add it, and now we have two foreign keys, one pointing from event ID to the event table ID, and one from user ID to the user ID. With this information, let's go ahead and create this model. creating it. And right away, we see the table here and we can start inserting IDs. Probably I will have to just copy them from there, or we're gonna work with event attendees in a moment when we actually start querying them. So that's how easy and simple it is to define database models with Nhost. We simply use that dashboard of Nhost to define the fields and the tables that we will have. And Nhost behind the scenes is using Postgres to set up our database. And I was saying before that I wanted to show you the actual the view from of our database. And we can do that by using the Hasura dashboard. So in the menu, let's select Hasura, and here let's press on the open. This will ask us for the admin secret, and we can take it simply from here. Let's copy it, paste, and just like that, we have connected. And now this is the dashboard of Hasura that is managing our GraphQL API. If you remember from our presentation, Hasura is sitting on top of our database, which is the Postgres SQL, and is powering the GraphQL API. So that means that from Hasura, we can go into the data and schema management. And here we will see the tables that we saw also in the Nhost dashboard. For example, we can go ahead and see the public tables that we just created, the event, for example, with all of this data, event attendees, and so on. So remember this dashboard because we are going to have to work a bit here to provide relationships, permissions, and so on. For now, if I'm not mistaken, we don't need, just at this moment, we don't need, but in very shortly, we're going to come back here to change something. So back to our guide, we have created the event table. We have created the event attendee table. And now we need to get into the GraphQL API. So from our side, we don't have to do anything else to get a GraphQL API. Nhost using Hasura already set up the GraphQL API for us, for the databases, for the tables that we created. And we can access and see this GraphQL API from the Nhost dashboard by going to our project, and here GraphQL. Here is where you can actually run some queries, and it comes with a predefined query event, ID, and date. If I press run, here we're gonna right away see the result with information about the events that we created. We can add here the name just for us to see the actual names, and these are the data that we actually just added in the database. So just like that, we have a fully featured GraphQL API ready for us to integrate in the application. How cool is that? How cool is that, just creating one table and then having all of this GraphQL API? And it's a lot. Like if we look in the documentation, here we can see everything that was generated for us on the GraphQL side. So we can look at different queries. We can query an event. We can query an event attendee. We can query by aggregating, or we can query one specific event by sending there the ID. So we're going to use a lot of these queries today, slowly, one by one. Let's not rush it. But what I wanted to say. What I wanted to say is that, now everything is working. We can run this query. But if we look at the drop down here, make request as. At the moment, we are making the request as the admin. If we change to Vadim, and if I'm going to try to, which is a user role, and if I'm going to try to run, we see that the field event not found in type root query, which means that there is no such query as event. Well, why is that? That is because of the permissions. And while the admin is allowed to access all the data in the application, users are by default not allowed to do anything. And we should go ahead and tell and define the permissions for this specific role, what we should have access to. And only after that, we will be able to query, for example, the data using as a user. So that's where Hasura is coming in play. So I'm going to go back there. If you closed it, you can open it from the side menu here, Hasura, open. And from here, we can go to at the top to the data and schema management. And what permissions will we have? Will we need? For example, for the event, let's go in the public event. And here we can open the permissions tab. As we can see, by default, the admin has permission to both insert, select, update, and delete. Here we can provide other roles and define the permissions for them. If we saw the role of our user is called user, and let's go ahead and define the permission for the user. What should the user be able to do with the events? I think the user should only be able to select it, and let's, under the select column, let's edit the permissions. User, and let's edit select. And here we can provide different kind of checks of how do we want to apply this permission. In this situation, I will do without any checks and allow any user to query events. And scroll down a bit until you see the columns, because we can provide very atomic permissions based on even columns. So you don't have to give access to all the columns. You can give access to only selected columns that you want. In this case, I'm going to toggle all, but in the next step, we're going to see how helpful it is to give access only to some data. So let's go ahead and save the permissions, updating permissions, and we can right away go to our GraphQL, back to our Nhost in the GraphQL, and try to run the same event query as a user. So if I run, now I have access to it. As you can see, I am a user, the role is user, and I have access to the event. Okay, perfect. So for this table, I will allow only the users to manage the actual events. In your application, you might need users to be able to create events. I don't know. Here you decide depending on the use case that you have to work with. Let's move to the event attendee. And here in web permissions, we also have a user. Oh, why do we have a user here? Okay, let's think what should the user be allowed to do with the event attendee data. Well, whenever a user will press the button join event, we will need to insert one row in this table. So for that reason, we're going to have to insert, and we can either go without any checks, or we can actually provide a security check for this query, because whenever we are trying to insert an event attendee, we should double check that we are trying to add ourselves to the event, not another user. So what we can do here is let's try to generate with a custom check, and our user ID should be equal to this field, the Hasura user ID. And this field is coming from the request header and is attached automatically for us. This field will contain the ID of a user that is making the request. And by providing this custom check, whenever we're going to try to insert a new event attendee, we're going to make sure that we are the user ID of the data that you're trying to insert is equal to the user ID of the authenticated user. And this way, if you're going to try to hack it in a way and try to sign up someone else for an event, you're not going to be able to do because this check will fail. Okay, let's scroll down a bit and let's toggle the possibility to add all of these properties when inserting something new. Okay, let's save permission. Now we're going to have permission to insert. Let's think about the select. Selecting should probably happen like a user should be able to check who is attending another event without any checks. Basically, we can check everything. We can see who is going where. That's not a problem. Let's give to all the columns. And because we're not going to work with update and delete, I'm going to leave them like this for now. Okay, we're done with our the permission of our custom tables, but we will also need to work with the table from the authentication, with the user tables. So let's go to the authentication. Let's go to the users. And here in the permissions, we have a user permission. What do we need to allow users? Never allow people to insert, update, or delete data from the auth schema. This is managed by Nhost, and we don't have to mess with that. However, we can get information, get this data, query this data. So let's edit the select permission on for the user role. And we're going to select, let's do without any checks. Basically, any user in the application can get information about our users. And here is the idea. If we didn't have column-based permissions, then anyone would have access to everything here, like emails, like password hashes, authentication tokens, and so on. This would be a very big security issue. So that's why I'm gonna deselect, and I'm gonna only select the ones that I'm interested in. For example, metadata, for example, avatar URL. This is a non-critical information. We can get the default name. Don't give a password hash to anyone. Ticket, okay. Created ad can be last seen is okay to show. What else? What else? Updated ad, email. I don't think we want to show our users your email. So I'm not gonna select it. And ID is something important, so let's select it. With that being said, double check your permissions as well. Let's press save permission. And from the permission side, we should be ready. Let's go ahead and go back to our GraphQL here. And yeah, you can play more with this GraphQL. And the way I recommend you do that is by opening the docs here and checking what queries do we have. For example, event, we already saw it. There is event by primary key. So you can add a new query here, or even after this one, you can say event by primary key. Here, it needs an ID. So let's give the ID, for example, this one. And for the fields, we can take ID, name, and it needs double ID, name, and date. And now, actually, let me comment out this one. And now if I do that, I get the response for the event using the primary key. So yeah, go ahead and play with your GraphQL API, see what data you have, how you can put it together in order for us in the next step to actually query it from our application. All of this information is available in the guide. So follow along here. I show you a bit of the permissions that you need to set up for your users table. You can look there to double check it. Sadia, can you send us more details about what errors do you get in those screens? Rajesh is asking where to submit the repository link for the hackathon and presentation videos as well. For that, I'm gonna come with more details tomorrow during the workshop. So yeah, I'm gonna provide you with a form where you need to submit your application for the demo day. I'm gonna do that tomorrow during the workshop. Okay, so once we are done with the permissions, we are ready to start querying our data in the application. So to query the data in the application, we're going to use a library called Apollo Client. You can open it, the documentation here. And as I said before, Apollo Client is a very powerful client-side library to query GraphQL APIs. And it's not only querying the GraphQL APIs, it also serves as a caching mechanism locally on your device so that the way you query the API is more performant. It is optimized by storing this information locally on the device. So yeah, this Apollo client actually, I'm teaching Apollo client in our premium course where we build the full stack mobile application, which is a very complicated application with a lot of screens, a lot of data, and it is possible to be made only with Apollo client to make sure that all the data stays synchronized across different screens. So let's go ahead and start by installing the Nhost React Apollo and also the Apollo client. I'm going to use this legacy peer dependency. You can try to install without them, but in my case, that is not working because of some differences in versions. So let's go ahead in the terminal. I'm going to do clear, and let's run the command npx expo install Nhost React Apollo and then Apollo client. Okay. Okay, it is installed. Now, our next step is to go ahead and set up our Apollo client. For that, in app.tsx, we need another kind of context provider. We're going to take it from Nhost React, and it's going to be called Nhost Nhost Apollo provide. No, that's not coming from here. That's coming from the library that we just installed, the Nhost React Apollo. And the component is called Nhost Apollo Provider. Now what we have to do is also to wrap our screens with this Nhost Apollo Provider. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to wrap our navigation with the nhost Apollo provider like this. So we have first the nhost React provider and then the Apollo provider. Just like that. And also it needs the nhost client. Cannot find name provider. I made a mistake. Provider, like this. Where are we starting? Are we starting with querying the users? Yeah, I think in the guide that I have is I start by querying the users. So let's scroll down a bit until we see the query users. To get the list of users, we can use this query, get users. So I can copy it from here. First of all, let's go in our nhost and let's basically paste this query here. I'm gonna remove everything. And why does it take cannot query field users on type query root, but it actually gives us. Users in the admin user. I think I should just simply refresh because we updated the permissions. And if now I'm going to change, yeah, now it works and it shows that as a user, I can also query users. And if I run this query, I see the list of users that I register, the support one, the Vadim, and also the other Vadim. So using this query, let's go ahead and get this data from our application. To do that, let's open our screens, users screen. And here is the screen that renders our users model, the one that we can access by pressing on this icon. At the moment, we're taking the information from the JSON, but what we will have to do is we have to query our backend. So first of all, we are going to have to define the query. So the query, let's do get users. Users is going to be equal to a GraphQL syntax. And here we need to provide the actual query that we want to run. Let's make sure to import GraphQL from Apollo client. We're going to import GraphQL. And by providing the GraphQL and here the template string, we can provide here the query that we defined right here. So let's just copy this query from here and let's paste it here. Now we have a GraphQL query that is ready to be run and fetched from the server. To run a query using Apollo, we will use a hook called use query. Now in our user screen, let's go ahead and using this hook use query, we need to pass here the GraphQL query that we want to execute. Exactly this one, get user. Now the use query will give us back an object with multiple properties, but what we're interested in is the loading, error, and also the data. I think data, I usually put it first. Data, loading, and error. All right, what we can do is we can, based on the loading and error, we can display some user feedback. For example, if loading, let's display the activity indicator. If error, I'm going to simply display a text with an error message. So, and lastly, I will do console log Data. Let's see what data do we have. I think I'm gonna do JSON.stringify data null and 2. Now, if I open the terminal and clear it and open the users, we don't see in them the user interface, but we see the data here, which means that now, if in the flat list, I'm not going to take it from users, but I'm going to take it from data.users, not data.users, but data.get, what, users? Yeah, I think users. It should be, yeah, this one, users. Now we right away see the 3 actual users from our database. And we are ready to remove the dummy data that is coming from the JSON. All right, so that was quite simple. In order to query our database, what we had to do is, first of all, to define the query that we can define with the help of a GraphQL Explorer here. First of all, make sure that your query is running correctly here. If it's not running correctly, then first fix the query here. And when it's running correctly, we can move it in our application and use it using the use query to get the data loading, or if it's error, it's going to return us error here. Okay, that was related to querying the list of users. We're going to have to do the same for the other data that we have. Let's go ahead and do the same for querying a list of events. To query a list of events, I'm going to scroll down here. I have prepared for you the query itself. So let's copy it from here. Let's first test it in our Explorer with Nhost. I'm going to run it. And we see that we get information about the events. Perfect. So let's go ahead and copy this query. And where we will query the events in our tab 1 screen. In the tab 1 screen, this is the screen with the calendar. So if you remember, we have to import the GraphQL and the use query from Apollo client. We have to define our query, get events, using the GraphQL and then a template string. Here, let's paste the event that we tested in the GraphQL Explorer. And inside our component in the tab 1 screen, we have here render item. Make sure not to write it here. We need to write it inside our component, but not inside a function. So here we will do the data loading an error. We're going to get it by calling the use query with our get event query. Is it get event or get events? Should be get events. Get events. So we can do the same with loading an error. I'm going to scroll down, and before we return the agenda, before this, I will put the if loading activity indicator and make sure to import it. If error, simply show it on the screen. For example, if we make a mistake in the field like name, we will see error fetching events, field name not found in event. And you'll see right away what's the problem there. And now let's go ahead and console log the events. Console log data, I mean. So if we console log the data, but I'm going to do it with JSON stringify. We should see that the data contains this array of events. And basically what it does, it's an array with events, as simply as that. The problem is that we cannot send an array of events to our agenda because it expects it a bit in a different format. If we look currently at how we are using the events from the dummy data in the data events, we will see the structure that agenda expects. It expects an object where we group all the events by date. So every date contains an array of events happening on that date. So what we have to do now is we have to loop through all of these events that are in this array and basically create a grouped version of this array where we put them in their respective date. Okay. Thank you. What call up? So I have prepared actually for you a helper function that will do just that. That will take an array of events and will return a schedule object, the agenda schedule object. So let's go ahead and take this function. And we can put it somewhere in this file, or we can add some, I don't know, utilities or stuff like that. It's better to extract it in a separate file, but for the sake of simplicity, I'm gonna put it here in the tab1 screen tsx. And in this case, I don't even need to export it because we're gonna use it right away here. Get event schedule based on the event. We need this agenda schedule to import from React Native Calendar. And yeah, that will do the trick. Now, if we console log not the data, but the get event schedule using the data.event, which is the array of events, now what we're going to see is exactly what we need, a grouped version of events. So here on this date, we have only one event. On 25, we have two events, 27, 1, 26, 1. And that means that now we can store these events like this by calling this get event schedule. And now they're displayed from our database. And we can safely remove the dummy data from here. And as you can see, they are properly grouped together, they are displayed properly. And if we go in the cannot take it. Come on. I need to make it smaller. So if we go in our where in the database and in the events, if I'm gonna, I don't know, add one more event, insert a new row, Q and A for what date? For 26, right? 26/11, 2022. And here 06/00/00. If I'm gonna insert it here, and if I'm going to refresh my application, then right away, I will see on 25th, the Q&A session. Did I put it on 25th? The Q&A? Yeah, what I wanted to say is 26th, probably. Now, yes, it appeared here under 26th. So that's how we get a list of events. We used a get event query to receive information about the event. Then we mapped through all of the events and we grouped them by date, by the day, I mean. And using that, we displayed them in our agenda, and everything now is working as it was working before. But at this point, all the data is coming from the database. So every time you're going to add a new event, you're going to update a new event, your users will see these updates in their application. Awesome. So we are not done yet with querying because we have implemented querying the events. Now, the next step is to query an event by ID. So whenever I press on one of these events, as you can see, we are still displaying dummy data. So where is that happening? That for us is our model screen. The model screen is responsible for rendering information about one event. So for the model screen here, we're going to need, first of all, the query. So let's go here. The query that we're going to use. Why nobody told me to zoom in on this page as well? So the query that we're going to need to query an event by ID is this one, event by primary key. In your case, if you actually name them differently, you should just change the name there. I'm going to go back to GraphQL. I'm going to remove everything, and I'm going to paste it here. If I'm going to try to run, it's going to say that validation failed, expected a value for the non-nullable variable ID. What is this issue about? This issue is saying that this event expects some variables, but we didn't send any variables. So let me actually go to the previous one because I need one of these IDs. And now back to my get event. And to send an ID here in the bottom side of this frame, under the variables, we can send the ID that we just copied. And I'm going to do it like this. So you can see that it's a simple object with that variable that needs to be sent to our query. And if we do that, we get the event by primary key. And as we can see, this key is the same as this one that we send there. Okay. So having this query, let's copy it from here. And let's go in our application in the model screen and start implementing the query for this page. We're going to need the GraphQL. We're going to need the use query from Apollo client. And let's start by defining the get event query, which is going to be a GraphQL query with the information that we've got from the GraphQL Explorer. Now, having this information here, we can go ahead in our application. And after we get the ID, instead of console logging, let's go ahead and get query our event. So here we're going to get data, loading, and error. From use query, and the query is going to be get event, but not simply the query get event, because if we do that, actually, let's continue like this and show that it will give us an error. What do we need is the loading indicator. So before we render the actual screen, let's go ahead and check if there was an error. Let's display it with a text. If it's loading, let's display the activity indicator that we should import from React Native. And we right away see couldn't find the event, expecting a value for non-nullable variable ID. The same error that we saw there on the Explorer when we didn't send variables. And that's right, because now we didn't send variables to this use query. To do that, we can send the second parameter with the options for the query. And one of the options is the variables object. And in this object, we need to provide the variables that we are expecting here. So in this case, we are expecting the ID. We're going to send the ID that we receive from the route. Because they have the same name, I can simplify it and remove one of them. And just like that, it should work. So if I go to the workshop, build any mobile application with React Native, no, it's not yet working because as you can see, we are not using the data. So the event that we want to display is going to be equal to data and safely accessing this name, the name of query. Event by primary key. And that means that now the event that we are importing from the dummy data, we don't need it anymore. And now I should see live notjustHack Kickstart, workshop, Q&A session. The date and the name is actually coming from the backend. And you see how fast it is. It gets this information even before we see the model. Okay, so we have received information about the event in the model screen. Right, okay. The next step on this model that we have is to display the users that are attending this event. Because now we are taking them from the dummy data, but what we are interested in is we want specifically users that pressed on this button join the event. So for that, what we have to do for that is we're gonna have to work with a mutation. Yeah, I'm gonna go a little bit off the plan just in order not to confuse you too much. I'm gonna do it a bit more step by step. So first we're gonna do the mutation, then we're gonna see one problem, and then we're gonna fix it and continue with the rest. So as I was saying, the mutation that we're gonna have to work with for event attendees, we can take it from here, event attendee. Skip the first part, I'm gonna show you in a moment, but what we are interested in is in this mutation here. So if I copy this mutation without the const, just simply the mutation, and if I put it in our virtual events here, our mutation will complain that our event doesn't have event attendees. And why is that happening, and why do we need this, this array here? The power of GraphQL is that it gives us the possibility to query relationship data easily. So for example, what are a relationship data? For example, yeah, at this moment, I'm not going to be able to show you that because we do not have any relationship models except this event attendees. But I think from the docs, I'm going to be able to show you. So in the docs, I'm going to search for the field event attendee. This is the GraphQL type for our attendee, for a person who is attending an event. Let's see what fields can we query on this type. One of the fields is the event ID, the ID, and the user ID. These are the fields that we have created for this table. But as we can see, we can also query the event itself, not the event ID, but the event with his with information about the event itself. And that gives us the possibility to get information about the attendee, and then also get the information about the related data. For example, about the event, we are getting the ID. The same way as we can, as I was showing you in the event attendee, the same way as Nhost, the same way as we can query the event and the user from the table event attendee, the same way we want to basically reverse this relationship and be able to query the event attendees inside one event. So if I'm going to check here the event type, come on, event type, event. Where is the event type? Yes, it should be here. Date, ID, name, and that's it. There is no way now to see who are the attendees. Wait a second. There is a way. This one. Let me double check if fields, event attendee. Oh, yeah, the thing is that as we can see here from the query that we're trying to define, is that event attendee is an array relationship. Works. It weirdly works with the array. From my planning, we had to add this array manually, but now I see that it actually works. And it returns us the array of attendees. Okay, let's give it a try. Maybe it will actually work. So let's join an event as a user. So for that, we need two variables, event ID and user ID. So in the variables here below, we're going to need the user ID, and also we're going to need the event ID. User ID and event ID. Where do we get it from? I'm going to open a new tab. And from, for example, authentication, I'm going to get the user ID of Vadim, this one. I'm going to put it here under the user ID. And for the event ID, I'm going to go to database events and take one of these events from here. For example, the Q&A session, just for us to see easier. Like this. And if I execute this query, we see that we have inserted some data. And the return type is the fields that we are requesting here. The ID of the event attendee, the user ID who is joining, the event ID, and also we are querying information about the event itself, like the event ID and the list of people who are joining there. And this list can go on and on. For example, from the event attendee, we can get the user with his display name. For example, display name, and so on. So if I run this one, we see that in my event attendee, there is the user with the display name Vadim. Perfect. So actually, we do not need this display name. We only needed the ID, and the rest is going to be taken care by Apollo. So now knowing the mutation that we have to run in order to join an event, let's go ahead and implement it in our application. For that, we're going to grab the join event query right away from here that we prepared. We're going to go in the, we're going to still be in the model screen there. model screen. And let's put the mutation below our get event query. So join event here. And as you saw, we do not have an S at the end. So make sure to double check how is the name of this field, event attendee or attendees. In my case, that's attendee. And what do I have to do now? Now I have to use another hook, use query, similar how we are using the use mutation. Similar how we are using a use query, we can use a mutation. And the difference between a query and a mutation is using queries, we get data from the backend. Using mutations, we update data on the backend. So anything that relates to inserting, updating, creating new, or deleting, that should be a mutation. So let's go ahead in our component. And after we get this event, let's define our mutation. Use mutation, and we need to pass here the mutation, the GraphQL mutation that we define here, join event. Now, what we get back from a use mutation is not an object, but it's an array of 2 values. The first value in that array is a function that we can call to execute the mutation. So I'm going to call it doJoinEvent. And whenever we call this function, we're going to execute this mutation. The second parameter here is similar to how a query returns us, basically data, loading, an array. I'm not going to need anything here because I'm going to manage the data loading and all of that when we actually call this doEvent query. doJoinEvent. But if you remember, when we call the doJoinEvent, we need to send here the event ID and the user ID. For the event ID, we will have it under event ID, but at this moment, we do not have a user ID here. So to get the user ID, we're going to need a hook also from Nhost React, and that hook is called use user ID, and it simply gives us the ID of a user. So const user ID equal use user ID. And just like that, we can use this user ID and the ID of the event, and we can we execute the mutation when we press on this join event button. This is the function that is being triggered when we press here. Let's go ahead and using a try catch block here, catch. Let's go ahead and execute that doJoinEvent. But it needs variables, so make sure to send here some parameters with the variables. And the variables that we need to send is the event ID and the user ID. So user ID is user ID, and event ID is the ID that we get from the route here. And because these two are the same name, I can delete one of them. And in the catch, we can simply say alert failed to join the event. And let's also give the error dot message. So now if I'm gonna press on the join event here, nothing happens, but we can go ahead and look in the database if it worked, because it might have worked the way we wanted. So if I look at the event attendee, let me go ahead and actually remove all of them, and just for me to see what's happening. And if I'm going to press join event here, we see right away the ID and the event ID and the user ID, which means that this user joined this event. The last step to put it together here on this screen is to actually query who are the users that join the event and display them in this list. To do that, in our guide, let's go to the join event, where join events. Yeah, in order to query our event attendees, we're gonna have to change a bit the way we are getting the event by primary key. Because so far we are getting only the ID, name, and date, but now we also want to get information about the event attendees. So let's grab it from here and let's update it in our get event also inside the model screen.tsx. So if we update it here, I should make sure to delete the S, just like that. And now if I'm going to console log the event, let's do with JSON stringify event, null and 0. Here we can see not 0, but I wanted 2. Yeah. Here we see the event attendees none, but if I do go there, also none. But if I join the event, I see event attendees with the information about the about myself, the user who just joined. So what we can do right now is where we are getting the displayed users, instead of taking them from the users that are coming from the dummy data, let's go ahead and take these display users from the event dot event attendee and display user. So this can also be undefined. The event can also be undefined. So let's do it like this. It's either the array of event attendee or it is an empty array. Then we are taking the first 5 users from there. And the problem is that the user is a field in that object. So we will probably the easiest way will be to map from an attendee to map to a user, because the attendee also has a user, attendee dot user. And now let's see display user 5s, can find variable users. Yeah, because we are still using users where I'm going to scroll down until we see, yeah, where we are displaying how many left are. So here, instead of users, we're going to do event dot event attendee dot length. And it should be event. And I see my image there. And if I go to another one, I am still there. This one, it has 0 users. And if I press join event, I automatically appear there. And lastly, what we can do is we can decide if we are part of this event or not. Basically here in the display, after we calculate this, let's also calculate whether we joined or not. So a variable joined will be, we joined if any of the attendees there are our users, are ourselves. So if event dot event attendee, if at least some of these attendees are me, attendee, if attendee attendee dot user dot ID. If that user is equal to my user ID, then that means that I am already signed up. And that also means that I don't have to display this join the event button. So I can simply do here a conditional check. And if not, I'm going to display a null. If joined, no, if I haven't joined yet, display the custom button. Otherwise, yeah, we don't see the button if we are already there. Yes, yes. Here we can join the event and the button disappears automatically. Oh, awesome. So what does that mean? That means that we can do git add, git commit, nhost Apollo, or yeah, like query API using Apollo and nhost. Okay. So that means that we are done here and we have finished actually implementing everything that we have planned for today. So in just how much? In just 2 hours, we have implemented the authentication layer, we have created users, we have designed our database, and also we have implemented the main queries in our application to get the information from the database. Awesome. So I'm super happy with how it turned out. Nhost is really making it easy, as you could see throughout the tutorial. The developer experience is really on point, and everything works the way you expect them to work, which I really love. So guys, if we have any questions at the moment about this build, feel free to leave them in the chat and we can talk about that. Or you can join our group coaching sessions, which are happening in 45 minutes. And these group coaching sessions, you can join either on Zoom or on Discord as well. And there you can ask questions also related to your project that you're doing for the hackathon. I want to remind you that we have a special prize during this hackathon from Nhost team. And this prize is going to be 24 months of pro Nhost account, which is worth around $600. And also the biggest advantage and the biggest opportunity is to have a 1-hour startup coaching sessions with the CEO and the founder of Nhost, Yuan. I think I would even enroll myself in the competition just to be able to get this opportunity to get coached by the founder of Nhost, because they are quite successful. They raised a lot of money and they are helping a lot of developers out there to build full stack applications quite easily. So once again, thank you very much, Nhost, for sponsoring this video, for sponsoring this workshop. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure to leave them a star on GitHub, because they are an open source alternative to Firebase. And the bread and butter of open source projects are GitHub stars, and it's quite important. Yes, that's what I wanted to say today. Why I don't have my camera opened? What's happening with my camera? Did they have it open throughout the tutorial? I don't know what happened, but I'm not gonna try to fix it at the moment. I'm gonna see you guys in a couple of minutes, in 40 minutes on Zoom. during our group coaching session. If you enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and I'm going to see you tomorrow during the next workshop, which let me quickly tell you what is the plan for tomorrow. The plan for tomorrow, I don't know what happened. Everything stopped working for me. Yeah, the plan for tomorrow is to continue this application and to add chatting functionalities using Stream Chat SDK. Also, tomorrow, I'm going to provide you with more information about how to apply to the demo day and how to make sure that you enter the competition for the prizes. Thank you very much, guys.